This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Jean Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Chapter 16. Granny Moreland's Visit. Part 2. Then for a week they worked out life together in the woods. The Harvester was the housekeeper and the cook. He added to his store many delicious broths and stimulants he brought from the city. They drove every day through the cool woods, often rode on the lake in the evenings, walked up the hill to the oak, and scattered fresh flowers on the 2 mounds there, and sat beside them talking for a time. The Harvester kept up his work with the herbs, and the little closet for the blue dishes was finished. They celebrated installing them by having supper on the living room table, with the teapot on one end and the pitcher full of bellflowers on the other. The girl took everything prescribed for her, bathed, slept all she could, and worked for health with all the force of her frail being. And as the days went by, it seemed to the Harvester her weight grew lighter, her hands hotter, and she drove herself to a gaiety almost delirious. He thought he would have preferred a dull, stupid sleep of malaria. There was colour in plenty on her cheeks now, and sometimes he found her wrapped in the white shawl at noon, on the warmest days Medicine Woods knew in early August, and on cool nights she wore the thinnest clothes begged to be taken on the lake. The Careys came out every other evening, and the doctor watched and worked, but he did not get the results he desired. His medicines were not effective. "David," he said one evening, "I don't like the looks of this. Your wife has fever I can't break. It is eating the little store of vitality she has right out of her, and some of these days she is coming down with a crash. She should yield to the remedies I am giving her. She acts to me like a woman driven wild by trouble she is concealing. Do you know anything that worries her?" "No," said the Harvester, "but I'll try to find out, if it will help you in your work." After they were gone, he left the Girl lying in the swing, guarded by the dog, and went across the marsh on the excuse that he was going to a bed of thorn apple at the foot of the hill. There he sat on a log and tried to think. With the mists of night rising around him, ghosts arose he fain would have escaped. "What will you give me in cold cash to tell you who she is and who her people are?" Times untold in the past 2 weeks he had smothered, swallowed, and choked it down. That question she had wanted to ask. Was it for a girl she had known, or was it for herself? Days of thought had deepened the first slight impression he so bravely had put aside, not into certainty, but a great fear that she had meant herself. If she did, what was he to do? Who was the man? There was a debt she had to pay if he asked it. What debt could a woman pay a man that did not involve money? Crouched on a log, he suffered and twisted in agonizing thought. At last he arose and returned to the cabin. He carried a few frosty blue-green leaves of velvet softness and unusual cutting, prickly thorn apples full of seeds, and some of the smoother, more yellowish green leaves of the Jimson weed to give excuse for his absence. "Don't touch them," he warned as he came to her. "They are poison and have disagreeable odor, but we are importing them for medicinal purposes. On the far side of the marsh, where the ground rises, there is a waste place just suited to them, and so long as they will seed and flourish with no care at all, I might as well have the price as the foreign people who raise them. They don't bring enough to make them worth cultivating, but when they grow alone and with no care, I can make money on the time required to clip the leaves and dry the seeds. I must go wash before I come close to you." The next day he had business in the city, and again she lay in the swing and talked to the dog while the Harvester was gone. She was startled as Belshazzar arose with a gruff bark. She looked down the driveway, but no one was coming. Then she followed the dog's eyes and saw a queer little old woman coming up the bank of Singing Water from the north. She remembered what the Harvester had said, and rising she opened the screen and went down the path. As the Girl advanced, she noticed the scrupulous cleanliness of the calico dress and gingham apron, and the snowy hair framing a bronzed face with dancing dark eyes. "Are you David's new wife?" asked Granny Moreland with laughing inflection. "Yes," said the Girl. "Come in. He told me to expect you. I am so sorry he is away, but we can get acquainted without him. Let me help you."
"I don't know but that ought to be the other way about. You don't look very strong, child."
"I am not well," said the Girl, "but it's lovely here, and the air is so fine I am going to be better soon. Take this chair until you rest a little, and then you shall see our pretty home and all the furniture and my dresses."
"Yes, I want to see things. My, but David has tried himself. I heard he was just tearing up Jack over here, and I could get the sound of the hammerin', and one day he asked me to come and see about his beddin'. He had that Lizzie Crofter to wash for him, but if I hadn't just stood over her, his blankets would have been ruined. She's no more respect for fine goods than a pig would have for cream pie. I hate to see woollens abused, as if they were human. My, but things is fancy here, since what David planted is growin'. Did you ever live in the country before?"
"No."
"Where do you hail from?"
"Well, not from the direction of hail," laughed the Girl. "I lived in Chicago, but we were not rich, and so I didn't know the luxury of the city, just the lonely, difficult part."
"Do you call Chicago lonely?"
"1,000 times more so than Medicine Woods. Here I know the trees will whisper to me, and the water laughs and sings all day, and the birds almost split their throats making music for me. But I can imagine no loneliness on earth that will begin to compare with being among the crowds and crowds of a large city. And no one has a word or look for you. I miss the sea of faces and the roar of life. At first I was almost wild with the silence, but now I don't find it still any more. The Harvester is teaching me what each sound means, and they seem to be countless."
"You think, then, you'll like it here?"
"I do indeed. Any one would. Even more than the beautiful location, I love the interesting part of the Harvester's occupation. I really think that gathering material to make medicines that will allay pain is the very greatest of all the great works a man can do."
"Good!"
cried Granny Moreland, her dark eyes snapping.
"I've always said it. I've tried to encourage David in it, and he's just capital at puttin' some of his stuff in shape and combinin' it in as good medicine as you ever took. This spring I was all crippled up with the rheumatiz until I wanted to holler every time I had to move, and sometimes it got so aggravatin' I'm not right sure but I done it. 'Long comes David and says, 'I can fix you something,' and bless you, if the boy didn't take the tucks out of me, until here I am, and tickled to pieces that I can get here. This time last year I didn't care if I lived or not. Now seems as if I'm caperish as a 3 weeks' lamb. I don't see how a man could do a bigger thing than to stir up life in you like that."
"I think this place makes an especial appeal to me, because shortly before I came I had to give up my mother. She was very ill and suffered horribly. Every time I see David going to his little laboratory on the hill to work a while, I slip away and ask God to help him to fix something that will ease the pain of humanity, as I would like to have seen her relieved."
"Why, you poor child! No wonder you are looking so thin and peaked."
"Oh, I'll soon be over that," said the Girl. "I am much better than when I came. I'll be coming over to trade pie with you before long. David says you are my nearest neighbour, so we must be close friends."
"Well, bless your big heart! Now who ever heard of a pretty young thing like you wanting to be friends with a plain old country woman?"
"Why, I think you are lovely!" cried the Girl. "And all of us are on the way to age, so we must remember